How do we find rest to our souls? This is what David seeks to share with us in Psalm 62. As we look at the psalm together, we will observe that David wants to bring out three truths. One, God's nature is such that we find rest in Him. Two, you cannot find true rest apart from God. Three, knowing these truths is not enough. We must continually apply ourselves to finding our true rest in God alone. The first truth David brings out in the psalm is in verse 1. My soul finds rest in God alone. My salvation comes from Him. God is not a taskmaster. God does not desire to load you down with all sorts of burdens and obligations. Rather, He desires to free you that you might find rest. Listen to Jesus' words from Matthew 11:28 and 29. Come to me, all you are who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. In Psalm 62, verse 1, David says, my salvation comes from Him. My salvation does not come from my works or my religious deeds, but from God. Ephesians 2:8-9. For it is by grace you have been saved through faith, and this is not from yourselves, it is a gift of God, not by works, so that no one can boast. David goes on to describe God's character in the psalm in verse 2. He says, God is my rock and my salvation. He is my fortress. I will never be shaken. In verse 7, he says, God is my mighty rock, my refuge. What does he mean by rock? David is saying that God is completely reliable foundation for his life, or a sure source of strength, a place of shelter that nothing may penetrate. The word fortress refers to a high place, whether a tower or a high mountain fortress. When you combine a rock solid fortification with the advantage of height, then you have a place of absolute safety. You're safe from enemies, from wild animals, from flood waters, or anything else that might threaten you. God is your fortress. David finishes off his description of God's nature in verse 11 and 12. Once God has spoken, twice I heard this, that power belongs to God, and steadfast love belongs to you, O Lord. For you repay to all according to their work. So here David calls God both strong and loving. He has unlimited power, but He's also loving, and He chooses to use that power for our good. God is strong, loving, unshakable, full of mercy, grace, and salvation. That's the first truth David brings out in the psalm. God's nature is such that we can find true rest in Him. I'm reminded of a chorus I learned and I have taught children. The lyrics goes like this: my God is so big, so strong and so mighty, there's nothing my God cannot do. The mountains are His, the rivers are His, the stars are His handiworks too. My God is so big, so strong and so mighty, there's nothing He cannot do. Can you see your God big in your life? Then you can truly find rest in Him. Be blessed.